I've had about 2 hours sleep, but there's no time for sleep because it's time for the Q&A, so let's get started.
The electrifying one had 3 questions. Number 1, will you have Stone Cold's special guest referee attire so we can recreate WrestleMania 20? Number 2, will you have The Rock's early 2004 attire? And number 3, will every added wrestler have their theme and Titantron corrected, including Brock Lesnar? Also, will Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, and Jeff Hardy be in the game? Awesome content, thank you for putting so much effort in this game, giving us the game that was missing those 16 years ago. And finally, it's playable.
Thank you so much for your questions. To answer the first one, I don't know. Let's take a look.
Yes, Brock Lesnar, Bill Goldberg, and Stone Cold Steve Austin all have their respective attires from WrestleMania 20. I did take some liberties with Steve Austin by keeping the sleeves on the t-shirt, but I will make a sleeveless version too for later on, so you can replay the match to your heart's content. You can play most of the actual pay-per-views in Create a Pay-Per-View. In the definitive edition of Smackdown vs. Raw, as a bonus, I created every pay-per-view from Bad Blood 2003 to WrestleMania 20, with as much of the actual matches included as currently possible. So if you hop into Create a Pay-Per-View, you can recreate and relive some of your favorite matches and events of 2003 and 2004. And when you're done with that, hop into Exhibition and play even more.
When it comes to WrestleMania 20 Rock, you can expect him in version 2.
And yes, every superstar on the regular roster has their Titantron and entrance music. Rikishi even has the attire he was supposed to be in the original Smackdown vs. Raw before he was pulled.
Hogan and Hall will be skipping this game though. Hogan will be back in the next one.
Coansome9017 asks, what about Biker Undertaker? Yup, the American Badass along with Vince McMahon are back to recreate their classic 2003 Survivor Series match. Just don't tell Kane. Mohammed Mahfouz says, amazing video. Make another long episode of this mod. That's awesome.
Yes, I know. Rebuilding SmackDown episode 6 was very short in comparison to the others. That was more because I had made up to a SmackDown vs. Raw Definitive Edition version 2 and had a hard drive failure and lost all that progress. So the episode itself was a real struggle because I was actually putting back together what I had for version 1 and, you know, really trying to put the episode together while being very deflated about the whole thing because it was such a downgrade from what I had planned and what I lost. So I will likely do something. I don't know, I've been thinking about maybe taking the update video, adding new things to it, and then adding it onto the rebuilding episode or splicing it in and doing some things with it. You know, maybe, I don't know. I will go back to rebuilding SmackDown episode 6 though, for SmackDown vs. Raw, and probably do something better with it.
Chaitanya Kumar asks, what about moves removed from previous games?
Yes, before my hard drive failure, there was actually about 40 new moves in the game. Now for version 1, there is just one, Stone Cold Spinebuster. Now, this really annoyed me when it wasn't in the original game because they'd given him Booker T Spinebuster. I'm big on move variations, as we'll get to another question later. So I think like mandatory moves need to be Rock Spinebuster, Austin Spinebuster, Undertaker Spinebuster, Booker T Spinebuster, Triple H's Spinebuster, Arn Anderson Spinebuster, Kurt Angle's Spinebuster, and several other normal Spinebuster variants, of course Batista's Spinebuster as well. You need loads of move variations because guess what? That sets the move apart and makes it different. Hold on to that thought. But yes, in rebuilding SmackDown episode 6, I was actually meant to go into moves, and then when I lost the data, I couldn't really talk about it. But yeah, there is one new move in version 1. I know there's not much. But yes, Austin has his Spinebuster, which I think is way better to have that. And in version 2, there will be many more. I've got like a folder of moves ready to go to be put back into the game, which I will be doing over the course of the next few months as we gear up to version 2.
Fun tidbit, I was almost going to delay this entirely because I was so disheartened of the things that I lost when I had the hard drive crash. I had brand new attires for a whole bunch of characters that aren't even in the game right now. But that just means there's plenty more to look forward to in version 2. Alonzo Time asks, dope video, can you make it an option to select none in all the categories in Create a Moveset? That way if a wrestler has limited moves that they have done from that position, they can choose none and you won't add them as the same move for all the directions. Or if say they only do one finisher And since there's always 2 slots, can we select none? Then the other one is the finisher.
For these games, especially the SmackDown vs. Raw games, the method you mentioned, such as having the same move on all directions or multiple directions, is the only way to do this. If you set a move as none, what happens is these games will go into a lock-up animation. So the guy will, if you're the computer or the human player and forget and go to use that directional input, the wrestlers will go into a lock-up and freeze. And the only way to get out of that, it's a soft lock-up. So the only way to get out of that is if there's another person in the match and they hit the two of you, you'll break out of it. But it'll keep happening. I tried this in Smackdown vs. Raw 2006 and onward, and that was the result. So, yeah, unfortunately, for people with lesser moves, you probably just have to set the same one on multiple directions.
Slick asks, wait, will you replace the 2003 arenas with 2004 arenas?
I don't think so. I think in this game, the arenas are just... I don't think so. In this game, I really like the arena choice, I really like the timeline, and I think graphically, the arenas... Actually, graphically, most of that game is really beautiful.
Brady Avery asks, will these updated attires and models that have been added have season mode functionality?
Yes, the added current roster and additional attires have full season mode functionality. So everything works in season, no problems.
You Can Call Me Riot asks, Q&A, any chance of Jeff Hardy being in the definitive edition of SmackDown vs. Raw? Also, any update on those textures you were going to put in SmackDown Shut Your Mouth's core mode?
Between the 2004 version of The Rock and Jeff Hardy, they're the most requested people to be in SmackDown vs. Raw's definitive edition. So yes, Jeff Hardy will be in version 2. As for the textures in SmackDown Shut Your Mouth's definitive edition, stay tuned.
William Grantham asked, Scott J01, I got a lot of questions for SmackDown vs. Raw. Number 1, does Stone Cold Steve Austin have his venomous theme? Number 2, has Michael Cole, Jerry Lawler, and Jim Ross in the game? I assume you mean as playable. Number 3, Christy Hemme. Number 4, Eugene. And number 5, how is Brock Lesnar in the game?
Thanks for your questions. You always ask about the Stone Cold Venomous theme, so I'm guessing that is your favorite theme or one of your favorite themes. So yes, I will add that theme in SmackDown vs. Raw as an extra. At the moment in version 1, music is all over the place, so I wouldn't pay attention to how it is in version 1, but in version 2, everyone from the regular roster to the Divas to the Legends will all have their music as well as a whole bunch of extra music. So not to worry about that. The Venomous theme will be there as one of those extras. It is also in SmackDown Shut Your Mouth and in SmackDown Here Comes the Pain's definitive editions. As for questions 2 to 4, no to all of those. And how is Brock Lesnar in the game? Magic.
Eric Yeezy asks, do the belts still look thick like toilet seats?
In this one, no they don't. I think the ones I've put on look pretty good. I can't speak for the original belts because I don't make those titles. I just wanted the real titles. But my ones I think look pretty good.
Aggressively Mediocre has a question regarding SmackDown 2's definitive edition. Will the season mode actually work with the mod? I remember season mode not working with SmackDown 2. My buddy and I would play for hours, years in the game, and never get booked. We were champions.
No, yes, season mode works absolutely fine. I'm always booked on shows. What characters were you using? Or were you using creator wrestlers that you weren't booked all the time?
Kent Brockman asks, I have a question for the Q&A. Is there any chance of seeing the world's most dangerous man, Ken Shamrock, on SmackDown Just Bring It? I know he was in the WWF until 1999, but I want to know if you at least plan to add him.
Yes, actually. SmackDown Just Bring It's definitive edition is coming on an update towards the late summer part of this year. And in that, the creator wrestler textures, a lot of them are gone and replaced with textures from WWF Royal Rumble for the Dreamcast, obviously, and SmackDown 2 Know Your Role, basically having all the textures from people like, say, Road Dogg, D'Lo Brown, Ken Shamrock, Big Boss Man, Godfather, etc., etc., so you can create what's left of the Attitude Era roster that needs to be in that game, in my opinion. Which will make the game way better because obviously all the SmackDown 2 win poses are in there and I've unlocked the ones that aren't unlocked anyway, so you've got even more stuff there and you've got all the moves from SmackDown 2 in there as well, so you have everything. It'll make the game way better and actually could make the game one of my favorites because strangely enough, it is just, when you put it that way, it's just title history, SmackDown 2's gameplay with PlayStation 2 graphics, and I really like that.
Christian Guderitz asks, question about SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 Definitive Edition. In other Definitive Editions you've done, you've added attires that were removed from the game. There are screenshots of 2008's Rey Mysterio in a different attire. It's the same attire he has in SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, and I personally think it looks way better than his default attire in 2008. Here's one of the screenshots, and I'd imagine this is still in the game files. Is there any way for you to add it back in? I also saw in your SmackDown vs. Raw Definitive Edition, you added attires from Here Comes the Pain and added attires that look the same as the default attire, but with different colors. Will this be the same case with SmackDown vs. Raw 2008? Will there be attires from SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 and attires with different colors? I'd love to see some for Randy Orton, Chris Benoit, Hardcore Holly, etc., etc.
Yes, in 2008, Rey will have that attire. It wasn't in the game's files, but I do have an earlier build of 2008, which I have that Rey Mysterio on. So I also think it is better than the black one he had in the default 2008. So that is his first attire, the black is his second. As far as other attires go, both SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 and 2008 have multiple attires for loads of people. If you follow me on other channels such as Patreon, Twitter, whatever, you've probably seen loads of attires that I've made for SmackDown vs. Raw, yes, but also SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, and I'm about to show off some other games as well. So yeah, loads and loads of attires coming, not to worry. Some that have never been in games before.
Harry Stevens asked, I have a question, please react to WWE Battlegrounds.
I can't because I've already seen it, and I don't want to be fake and pretend and do a fake reaction video where I'm like, oh my god, that's not me. Yeah, here's what I think about it though. So I think this game was likely going to come out this summer as a secondary game. They did not know 2K21 was going to be cancelled until the reaction of 2K20 was so bad that there was no way they could put out 2K21, so this became your full wrestling game. Outside of that, yes, I think the models look way off. I preferred WWE All-Stars art style, but WWE All-Stars, I picked it up and played it for a bit with people I knew that worked in the games industry, ironically enough, at the time. I was absolutely nowhere near that. At that point, I was actually wrestling still, I think, right, 2009? Was it 2009 or was it 2010? That game came out. Or maybe I was hurt. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry. Yes, so they very much enjoyed it because it's very much sort of a criticky type game. We're like, oh, it's everything. For me, personally, it's not a sports-oriented game, so I don't like that type of wrestling game. It's not for me. So I wouldn't be buying it even if it looked fantastic in terms of its art direction. It's just not the type of wrestling game I want. And also, obviously, the roster is going to be nowhere near of anything I'm interested in playing. So, yeah, there's that. But yeah, I wouldn't pile on it too much because I don't think that was the plan all along. And hey, this is going to be our full wrestling release. I bet you this was going to be a game that came out around August, September, and 2K21 was going to hit its usual October-November release window until it was pulled.
Darkly Goose asked, sorry if you've already answered this, but is it possible to include the removed Jeff Hardy model with the blue paint like we saw in Here Comes the Pain screenshots in the game? Number 2, thoughts on the cancellation of WWE 2K21? And number 3, is it possible to add renders or images to Here Comes the Pain added superstars from Smackdown Shut Your Mouth instead of the default blue core image? Thank you.
Okay, let's answer questions 1 and 3 first. When it comes to Jeff Hardy, I'll let you know in a video sometime later this year. When it comes to Smackdown Shut Your Mouth characters having pictures in Smackdown Here Comes the Pain, or everybody having different pictures in Smackdown Here Comes the Pain, yes, I showed you guys my custom renders that I've done for Smackdown Shut Your Mouth that are currently in version 1 and beyond. Smackdown Here Comes the Pain will have a very, very similar thing in the next update. So yeah, not to worry, everyone will match. Well, I'm currently filming the game design video, which I'm hoping to be my next video or the second to next video. So that will document how I would deal with the WWE franchise as a whole. But as far as 2K21 being cancelled, I kind of think the wrong people were in charge from top to bottom. That's why I mentioned the game design video, because I think like if you look at the approach of someone that not only understands wrestling as not just an entertainment medium, not just as a sport, but as someone who's done it, as well as someone that is heavily invested in the games since their inception, then you have someone that is extremely passionate about making something that not only appeals to them, but appeals to the broadest audience possible, because you understand that pro wrestling isn't just the people that love it now, it isn't just the people that love it in the past, it is everyone. So you have to make something that appeals to everyone. And I think the worst thing that they could do is that they had people from the very top all the way down from about, I think, 2004, 2005, so even dating back to THQ, of where it was just in the wrong hands, because some of those people that worked on those games, yes, they may have really loved wrestling, but they loved indie wrestling, not professional wrestling. Therefore, it turned away older fans like myself, and sales dropped from 2007 onwards quite sharply. Especially with when SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 debuted. I remember I was talking to a friend of mine who, when I was in the US for a brief period of time at that point, this was 2007, because 2008 was coming out that year, and he was like, "Oh, there's just not as much anticipation for 2008 as there have been for the previous year's games." And while yes, some of that could definitely be attributed to WWE's TV being bad for like 2 years plus by that point, a lot of it definitely was that there was a lot of anticipation for 2007. One, because it was on the new consoles, it looked great, but the most important thing was that it still had a lot of appealing things from the PlayStation 2 games. 2008 was moving further and further away from that. You know, yes, I've made no secret that I hate the analog control system, and I think it was a boneheaded idea. I think the whole not making the game series a franchise in and of itself during that period of times and having gimmicky changes was dumb entirely, because you are alienating people that loved the franchise since SmackDown 1. And while gameplay iterations can be made mechanically, changing the way you play just because Fight Night sold well is dumb. And, you know, it boggles my mind. You know, it's a clear, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's that, and then you have obviously people at, you know, and higher up who, you know, have no affiliation with wrestling. They don't care about wrestling, and so to them, it's a game we put out, and it's not something necessarily that they need to look too much into on the value of the property they have. And while wrestling isn't exactly white hot right now, I mean, it is if you talk to someone in the wrestling bubble, they think it's white hot. But if you talk to the general public, they still, you know, an older person will still talk about Hogan or Flair, and a younger person will talk about Rock or Austin. Not really anything else. But I think as a property, the WWE has never been more valuable as a video game property, because consoles and PC gaming are bigger than ever right now. You know, people love video games, they sell extremely well. It's not as much of a niche market anymore. Graphically, we're doing things that, you know, just imagine seeing something like Smackdown 2 in the 2K19 graphics, in like 2K19's graphical system. You'd go crazy. Well, I would. You know, that's a huge section of people that would go nuts. And then I just think look at the WWE network. You have things that appeal to all types of people, right? So the video game has to do the same thing. And like I said, I'm going too much into this, but in the game design video, I plot out my crazy idea of what a wrestling game should be. And it's not, you know, some people might think, oh, you are going to be like, oh, we'll go back to showcases because I love the Attitude Era, so obviously I just want tons of characters. And while I think showcases are the best 2K option and the best thing that they could do, because I think Road to WrestleMania is being looked at with very rose-tinted glasses right now, because, you know, some of the people that worked on them are more accessible now. But realistically, they are terrible for the game, because if you think about it, you are getting 3 or 4 stories with very, very limited characters, and it does nothing once it is over. Whereas with a showcase, you unlock a ton of stuff, a ton of extra arenas, a ton of extra superstars, a ton of extra music, a ton of extra titles. You have a whole bunch of extra content that you can import into the universe. However, I don't think a showcase mode, I don't think a Road to WrestleMania mode, I don't think a season mode is the way to go anymore. I have a completely different idea of how to structure a wrestling game. So we'll go into that in full in the game design video. Also, I did see quite a few people online saying that I should be put in charge of the 2K WWE game series, and I just want to say thank you. That is super flattering, and it makes me happy because it shows what I've done with these games so far is resonating with people. I mean, I've even been thinking about doing more modern games just because of the feedback, even though they're not my personal taste. I could just feel like looking at them and being like, okay, but as a game, what would be better for this time frame? So maybe. Anyway, yes, so hopefully that answers your question.
Glauging asks, question for the Q&A. Can you name one thing you love about modern wrestling and one thing you hate? I assume you mean about modern wrestling.
One thing I love about modern wrestling is I love how much more accepting the business is of people of all sizes. I think when I initially wanted to do it back in 2003, size was a real big issue even then. And I think, of course, now, as long as you look like an athlete, I'm not someone that doesn't think you need to look in shape. Of course, there are exceptions where people can just be big, burly powerhouses, of course. But I mean, look, for the most part, I think as long as you look like an athlete, you have a good physique, your mass doesn't really need to be a big thing because of it's wrestling. You can, there's so many ways to do it. There are so many maneuvers. You can, you don't have to be the biggest guy, but still compete for the world title because you can wrestle big, and what I mean by that is you can do not necessarily big moves in terms of jumping all over the place like a Jeff Hardy or Robbie D or something like that. Of course, that works too. But you could also be someone like a Kurt Angle or Chris Benoit who do really big, impactful moves. And as long as they look well and you can be taken seriously because you look like a real serious athlete, I think that works. And I love the fact that people are very accepting of that and probably even more accepting than just that, because that prerequisite isn't even there anymore. A lot of people are just happy to see people that they like, which I think is great, and that needed to change for a long time. Okay, so let's get to something I hate. And this is relatively new, probably in the last 10 years or so. So new in my standards of new, But yes, when people do moves differently and put their own spin on a move, a lot of the time I see people and wrestling quote-unquote journalists, so who aren't really journalists, they have a YouTube channel, saying they did the move wrong, and it becomes quite a discussion of they've done their move wrong. Something like as simple as the Educator or the Rock Sharpshooter. Yes, I know Bret Hart made a snarky comment, but what else is new? Realistically, it is a variation, and the thing that bothers me most of all is when people go, I don't think X, Y, or Z move hurts, and I'm like, well, have you performed it to someone, or have you put someone in it, or have you been put in it? Again, take the Rock Sharpshooter, for example. If somebody put you in it, and then they twerked your ankles way back and pulled on them, and they were the size of someone like The Rock, it would hurt like hell. Or if you were Edge and you were pushing forward on the Educator, you would really hurt somebody's ankle if you did it for real. So the logistics there don't really make sense to me, and I don't understand that, and it really irks me, because this is why wrestling is so generic in terms of moves, because people don't have variations like that anymore, not to the extent that they did. And I remember when I was growing up, and Smackdown Shut Your Mouth came out, and both the Educator and the Sharpshooter were actually, I think that was the first games they debuted in. and not one person was annoyed about it. They were over the moon and super happy. So I also think it adds to the point of why we don't have a whole bunch of these moves in the game, because, you know, when you build a stigma that this is how the move is meant to be done and this is the only way it's meant to be done, then guess what? We don't get a variety of moves, and we don't end up with wrestlers with very unique movesets with different submissions, spinebusters, or whatever, suplexes even, that all look different. We have maybe 5 to choose from instead of 20. Okay, so up next is the video game design video. I'm super excited to show you guys how I think the next wrestling game should be, or what my wrestling game would be if I designed it. Again, I was super flattered by seeing YouTube channels and people on boards and things like that saying that 2K should bring me in to help design the next WWE 2K game, or design the WWE 2K game. I was super humbled, super flattered by it. So I really hope you like what I would do with a next wrestling game in terms of a feature set, grappling, and under the WWE umbrella. Also, if you guys enjoy this video, please hit that like button. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell to be notified every time I upload a new video. If you can support me on Patreon, please do it. patreon.com/ScottJay. So until then, take care, stay safe, and stay home, and I'll see you guys next time.